back to another week with me, your host, Miss Brown. Your notes this week are slightly shorter, and you can thank my laziness for that. This week, we're talking about equilibrium. Don't know what that is? Well, let's get started. Equilibrium is when quantity demanded and quantity supplied intersect and are equal. It's the price where the owner and the buyer agree. Let's look at this on a combined supply and demand schedule. This is a combined supply and demand schedule. So as you can see, you have the price of pizza, which is the same, and then you have quantity demanded and quantity supplied. Which price has both quantity demanded and quantity supplied equal? Well, hopefully you can see that at $1.50, the quantity demanded is 200 and the quantity supplied is 200. That's equilibrium. At 50 cents, the quantity demanded is 300. So 50 cents would be right in here, so we're going to put a dot right here. At $1, they're demanding 250, so dot's going to go there. At 150, they're demanding 200, so 150 will be in the middle here, right there. At 250, people want 100, so 250 would be here, 100, and then at $3, only 50 people are willing to pay $3. So if I connect those dots, and that's my demand. So let's change the color for supply to green. At 50 cents, a business is willing to supply 100. At $1, they're willing to supply 150. At 200, they're willing to supply 150. At $2.50, they're willing to supply 250. I apologize. At 250, they were willing to supply 300. I say 250, but I should have plotted 300. And at $3, they're willing to supply 350. And so we'll draw a line to connect those dots, and that's supply. Now, to find your equilibrium price, you're looking for the point where they both connect, which is going to be, I'm going to circle it right here. And what you would do is have a dotted line connect those. So you have your demand in blue, your supply in green, and where they connect is the equilibrium price. That's the price where everybody's happy. It's a happy spot. Miss Brown, is there always an equilibrium price? No, and that's called disequilibrium. When quantity demanded does not always equal quantity supplied. This is usually caused by either a shortage or a surplus. A shortage is one type of disequilibrium. You get a shortage when the price drops for something, and so demand goes high because, as you know, when price drops, people want to buy more. But of course, you know, when price drops, businesses aren't really motivated to keep supplying goods, and so supply drops. Everyone wants their products at the lowest price, but there's very little supply, so that's a shortage. How do you solve a shortage? Well, price has to go up. Once that happens, demand will drop and equilibrium will be reached again. Let's look at things that the government can do that can cause a shortage. First, you have a price ceiling. Later, you have a price floor. A price ceiling is just simply when the government sets a maximum price for something. One example, rent control. Rent control means the government has set a maximum price for what rent can be. So this is good for consumers because they get a low price for rent. But here's the problem. When price drops, what happens to supply? Supply is also going to drop. Law of supply. So since landlords are not really motivated to supply a lot of apartments, you have this shortage of apartments. And so everybody's clamoring for this rent controlled apartment. So you get a lot of problems. You'll see issues with discrimination or people bribing landlords to get this particular apartment. Again, you'll have a shortage of apartments, and also you'll get rundown homes because what's the point of me fixing up this house? I'm not even getting very much money for it. So, pros, you get low prices for consumers. The cons are you get this shortage of apartments, discrimination, rundown homes. And so, eventually, again, in all shortages, the price will have to go up.
Okay, so this is a supply and demand schedule for rent control. So let's just say equilibrium right now for rent is $600. This is where they connect. And remember, you're going to draw that dotted line whenever you figure out the equilibrium price. So that's the price where everything, where the points intersect. But usually when it comes to rent control, they put the rent below the equilibrium price. So let's just say the rent is for the minimum price, the max that you can charge for rent is going to be $400. So that's significantly below the equilibrium price.
Let's talk about a price floor. So, hopefully, you recognize that a price floor at the bottom, which means the government is going to set a minimum price. So, an example of this would be minimum wage. Minimum wage prevents businesses from paying low wages. So when a new minimum wage is set, so for example, right now it's 2021, minimum wage in Mississippi is $7.25, and there was a bill to increase minimum wage to $14. So the obvious pro are that people get an increase in pay, but the problem is now that pay has risen, demand for jobs have also risen. But at the same time, businesses are now going to need less people. Why? Well, I've got to pay out a lot more money. So I don't have as much money profit. So to keep my profits still strong, I'll cut back jobs or not hire as many people because I have to pay them so much more. So demand for jobs has went up, supply has went down, which creates again this shortage of jobs. So let's take a look at this curve.
Okay, so this time I'm going to show you a price floor for a minimum wage. So remember, a price floor is where the government sets a minimum in terms of this is the least you can pay someone. So hopefully you can see that the equilibrium price is about $9. So 9 people are demanding work at $9 an hour. Let me make that a little thicker. At $9 an hour, you have about 9 people demanding work. That's the equilibrium price. That's a happy point. But when the government comes in and sets the price, and ideally they wanted to set the price in 2020 at $14. Well, let's look at the demand and supply curve. Well, demand will be high. You'll have more than 13 people wanting to apply for a job. So that part is good for workers. But at $14 an hour, you have less than and we don't know because it's not plotted on here, but we know that at 11:50 we had maybe 3 people, maybe businesses were wanting to hire 3 people. So at $14 an hour, it could be even less than one. So that means they're not wanting to hire people at that price. So you have the demand for workers is going to be low, while supply is going to be high. In terms of, yeah, it's a lot of people out looking for a job, but very few people want to work. And so now you've created this sort of shortage of work.
All right, so you've learned about a shortage and how shortages can be caused by the government in price ceilings, price floors, and of course about some examples like minimum wage or rent control. So let's talk about when the opposite happens and you have a surplus. So a surplus just simply means you have a lot of product and very little people wanting to buy it. Think of things like iPods. You can easily probably find an iPod on Amazon or even at Walmart. But how many people want to buy them? Not so many. So you've got a lot of product, no one wants to buy it, you've got a surplus. What do you do about a surplus? You'll have to lower your price. Once you do that, your demand will rise and supply will fall. And so we'll achieve equilibrium again.